Good afternoon, Professor Étienne Ghys, Mrs. Christelle Thuy, Consul General of France in Hong Kong and Macau, esteemed colleagues, friends, and fellow students. My name is Anderson Shum. I'm Vice President Research of City University of Hong Kong and the facilitator for today's lecture. It is my real pleasure to welcome you all to this installment of the France-Hong Kong Distinguished Lecture Series. The France-Hong Kong Distinguished Lectures are a series of high-profile lectures that have been organized by CityU Hong Kong since 2005. It is our great pleasure to have your attendance today at this meaningful lecture. Today, we are really honored to have Professor Étienne Ghys, Permanent Secretary of the French Academy of Sciences, to deliver a lecture entitled The Missions of an Academy of Sciences, the Example of France. Professor Ghys is also Emeritus Research Director at the French National Center for Scientific Research, CNRS, and a member of the Academia Europaea. Renowned for his contributions to mathematics and scientific leadership, Professor Ghys will explore the evolving roles of academies of sciences in the modern world, drawing insight from the rich history and mission of the French Academy of Sciences. Before I invite Professor Étienne Ghys to the stage, may I invite Mrs. Christelle Thuy, Consul General of France in Hong Kong and Macau, to give the opening speech. Mrs. Thuy, please.
Dear Professor Shum, dear Professor Ghys, distinguished participants, it is a great pleasure and an honor to be with you again today for the continuation of the Distinguished Lecture Series celebrations at the City University of Hong Kong. I would like to begin by expressing again my deep gratitude to the university, to the Institute for Advanced Studies, and to Professor Siarlé in particular for their unwavering support and to this remarkable partnership that for 20 years has united our scientific communities through dialogue and research. Today, we have the privilege of listening to Professor Étienne Ghys, world-renowned mathematician, researcher at École Normale Supérieure de Lyon, and perpetual secretary of the French Academy of Sciences. Beyond his outstanding contributions to geometry and dynamical systems, Professor Ghys has devoted much of his career to sharing the beauty of mathematics and reflecting on the role of science in society. His lecture, The Missions of an Academy of Sciences, the Example of France, will offer an invaluable perspective on how scientific institutions can contribute to progress and public interest in science in a complex and fast-changing world. Founded in 1666, the French Academy of Sciences has, since its beginning, embodied the excellence of France in science and innovation and the need to make it accessible to the general public without ignoring the importance of the necessary dialogue with ethics and the responsibilities coming along the power of knowledge. An important mission of the French Academy of Sciences is also to promote international scientific collaborations to address worldwide challenges with universities like CityU or sister academies like the Hong Kong Academy of Sciences. The 20th anniversary of the France-Hong Kong Distinguished Lecture Series this year is a perfect opportunity to build on the presence of several eminent members of the French Academy from different disciplines, beside Professor Ghys and Professor Siarlé in mathematics, the president of the Academy, Françoise Combe, in astrophysics, gold medal of the CNRS for her pioneering works on the formation and evolution of galaxies, on which she gave a remarkable lecture yesterday, Professor Haroche, Nobel Prize in Physics, and Professor Fontecave in Chemistry, who has received also many awards on the energy transition. So I wish you all an inspiring lecture and subsequent discussion which could help us reflect on how science can make our world a better world. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Mrs. Thuy. Please remain on stage. May I now also invite our distinguished guests, Professor Ghys, Professor Harosh, Professor Shilat, our colleagues Professor Li Shaili and Professor Sokhan Jiang, to take a group photo on the stage before we start the lecture. May I invite Professor Étienne Ghys to get prepared to deliver the France Hong Kong Distinguished Lecture.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I said to myself this morning, this is maybe the first time in my life that I give a talk without speaking of mathematics. So those who are expecting some science, forgive me. I will try to describe the Académie des Sciences. I will try to explain through history what are its missions, and if we are good or not good, if we could do better or not. So, as it turns out, I did not choose the title of this talk. The title was chosen by Philippe Sierlet, as you know, was at the origin of this series of lectures 20 years ago. And this series of lectures is highly connected with the Académie des Sciences. And so he thought, and I trust him, he thought that it could be a good idea to explain what is the Académie des Sciences, what is more or less its history, what are its missions. And this is what I plan to do today. Again, no mathematics, I apologize. So, 20 years ago, indeed, my predecessor, Jean d'Hercourt, sent a letter to Philippe. Philippe was arriving here in CTU, and he didn't know how to be useful to the Académie des Sciences. So he received a message, a letter from Jean d'Hercourt, saying that it could be an optimal, wonderful opportunity for him to manage the Chinese community's relationship with the Académie des Sciences, that would extend the relationship that the Academy maintained with the Chinese Academy of Science, and it would enhance the influence of mathematics and the role of the French community. So thank you very much, Philippe. Everything is due to you. These 20 years of science and this talk. So what are the missions of the Académie des Sciences? Well, that's rather easy because we have a website, and on the website you can see what are the missions. And the missions are the following. We should support research, not surprise. We should support scientific life. We should have scientific expertise. We should organize transmission and distribution, and there's also an international aspect. So I will discuss these points, but this is the official missions. Actually, I want to begin describing the history of the Académie des Sciences, not in 1666, but before that. It turns out that this man, Marin Mersenne, he organized very informally, around 1635, an academy in Paris, where scientists would visit him basically twice a week, discussing science, all kinds of science, basically mathematics at the time, but not only. And it was like a pre-academy called the Mersenne Academy. And Marin Mersenne had a very good idea. His idea was written in a letter. I have an extract here. He said, be careful. Academy can be useful when people meet. But you know, to go from the south of France to Paris, it's a long travel. If you want to go from Toulouse to Paris at this time, maybe 3 or 4 days, I don't know, something like that. So he understood that there was a geographical problem, not only that, and he understood also that face-to-face discussions too often implies arguing opinions and discouraging others. So he says that face-to-face discussion is not always the best. So he said, maybe writing letters is more important and more intelligent. And I think this message from this guy almost 360 years ago is something which is important for us. We are living today in a world where face-to-face discussion is precious, but it's not the only way of communicating. And we have to decide what is the balance. What is the right balance between exchanging by Zoom or face-to-face discussions? We do not have the final decision, but for example, in the Académie des Sciences, we have decided basically during the COVID, but we kept this idea that we can have meetings by Zoom. This is something which is useful. It's not the only solution, but we have to work hard on that. We have scientists from all parts of France, and if you live in Toulouse or in any other city, to go to Paris for 1 hour meeting is frequently is useless. So once again, I think Mara Mersenne was right. We have to be careful, and we should work hard on getting better communication by internet. Now, in 1666, the Académie des Sciences began in a very informal way in the library of the king. The king was the King Louis XIV. And there was no rule. It was like the king said, well, come to the library and you can have discussion. And this is what happened. You can see here a representation of this scientist doing I don't know what. But anyway, so they met, and rather quickly they understood that they needed more rules, more regulations. They needed a structure which was more stable. And it took some time until 1699, where the Academy received officially from the king, Louis XIV, regulations, official regulations, what you have to do. It's very interesting to read these regulations of the time. And what is interesting is that the main point of the king is, you have to give me advice. You have to advise me on what should be done in science in my country. You see that the foundation of the Academy was Colbert. Colbert was a famous minister of Louis XIV, very intelligent in the sense that he understood that technology, science was fundamental for the development of France. And all of this is, I think, the foundation of the Académie des Sciences is this idea. A group of people, of gifted people, knowledgeable people, should advise the government. That's the original idea. Now, do we follow this idea or not? You will see. This is one of the key points. What is the relation between the Academy and the power? Are we depending on the power? Are we free to say whatever you want? Are we free to say that Louis XIV is not a good king? Not quite. But this balance between the power and science has always been present in the life of the Academy. This is a famous picture showing the installation. This is a wrong picture, it never happened, but it's an installation of the Académie des Sciences in 1666. Of course, in the middle you can see the king, Louis XIV, le roi soleil. And in blue, you can see my predecessor, the first permanent secretary of the Académie des Sciences. And behind him, you have what I cannot tell you, but the most prestigious scientist of the time. Initially, the Academy was located in the Louvre. Look, it had 70 members and 80 corresponding members not living in Paris. You may know that one of the main problems in France, one of the problems, among many others, one of the problems is that everything is centralized in Paris, including science. And the thing is not going in the good direction. Still today, most of science is in Paris, and this is not a good idea. There has been some progress in the last 20 or 30 years, but still, the science in France is based in Paris. So just to tell you that Louis XIV or Colbert, they had understood that it was very important to have corresponding members outside of Paris. You see 150 members of the Academy in total. Also, members who are appointed by the king, but following a nomination by the Academy. So looking at the history of the Academy, I can tell you that from 1666 to today, basically, kings, emperors, presidents never did interact too much with us. There are some counterexamples. In total, we had about 3,000 members elected from 1666. In some cases, the king were kind of taking freedom. For example, the famous physicist Fourier, one of the most important physicists in the 19th century, was barred by Napoleon. He was elected, and Napoleon did not want him. Another one was Carnot, Lazare Carnot. Lazare Carnot was elected twice and expelled twice. So, but these are only a small number of examples. In almost all cases, the king or the president accepts the nomination from the Academy. But that's a subtle question. He could, if he wanted, he could not accept. You see that it's from 1699 to 1793. What happened in 1793, the French Revolution, and the first reaction of the French Revolution was to cancel, abolish the academies. So it's a terrible moment in our history. You have put the picture of Lavoisier. Lavoisier was one of the best chemists in all time, and he was beheaded by the revolution with the famous sentence, "The Republic needs neither scholars nor chemists. The course of justice cannot be delayed." So during 2 years, there was no academy in France, and this was related not only to the Académie des Sciences, but also to the Academy of Fine Arts. All the academies were abolished at the same moment. And what happened is that very quickly, the government of the revolution understood that was a mistake. And 2 years later, they recreated not the academies, but the Institut de France. What is it? This is a great idea. Really, it's a great idea. The French Revolution had many good ideas. The great idea is this. They created what's called the Institut de France, which is not one academy, it's not two academies, it's a set of people knowledgeable in all subjects. Could be history, could be literature, could be science, could be art. And this big quantity of people together made the Institut de France. And inside this Institut de France, there were some subsections. Like there was a section of science, a section of history. But anyway, it was one thing. And actually, the word that they used, I think it's good, they called that the Parliament of Scholars. And really, the revolution had that in mind. They wanted to do something like a parliament for scholars. very analogous to the political parliament. Actually, they had they dressed like the deputy. It was really like a parliament. It was a very, very good idea. However, very quickly, things change. So let me give you, first of all, the structure of this institute. Well, again, 60 members in Paris, 60 associate members in the département outside of Paris, and 8 foreign members. The academy was, the scientific section was divided into mathematical sciences and physical sciences, knowing that physics at the time meant actually biology. You see, physical science means chemistry, veterinary, anatomy, zoology, medicine, and surgery. So it was very different from now. And there was 2 perpetual secretaries, each one for the 2 divisions. So it was a good system with this parliament. And what happened in 1805, Napoleon, the great Napoleon, our emperor, had visited Italy, had stolen all pieces of art that he could find in Italy, and had filled the museum, Le Louvre, with pieces of art, no more room in Le Louvre. So he said to the academicians, you should leave Le Louvre, cross the river, and you go to this palace called Palais de l'Institut, the Palace of the Institute, where you can enjoy your life independent from Le Louvre. And this is a view of the Palais de l'Institut, which is a wonderful place, which is still our place today. But it was the Institut again, no academy. It was Institut. And what happened with our beautiful library, and what happened the following, after Napoleon, we had a new king. The king came back and was upset with the idea of Institut. And he wanted to restore the academies. And all of a sudden, he decided to create academies, one for science, one for fine arts, one for literature, and all these new academies were inside the Institut. You know, one of the features of the French system, secret, we are very good for creating new structures. We were not so good to delete old structures. So what's happening today is that the Institut de France still exists, but inside the Institut de France, we have 5 elements, the 5 academies, which are officially independent. Financially, intellectually, everything is independent, but we are together. It's like a set. You know, a mathematician says that a set is made of elements. And a set is nothing more than the list of elements. But in the case of the Institute, it's something different. The Institute is the union of 5 academies, but it's more than that. Which means that, in fact, even though we have full responsibility inside the Académie des Sciences, in fact, this is not true. We have to follow the regulation of the Institute, and believe me, it's not always easy. One of the examples, I will discuss later, the possibility of creating a young academy. That would be a good idea. I will say a few words on that later. But it's just impossible to do that inside the structure of the Institute, because 4 of the 5 academies do not accept this idea of having young people inside the Institute. That's one of the main difficulties that we have. So it's not easy. Let me give 3 examples, just examples. 3 examples of creations or inventions or contributions of the Académie des Sciences. One for the 17th century, one for the 18th century, and one for the 19th century. This is interesting. In 1693, the king, Louis XIV, wanted a printing font in glorifying him. And the Académie des Sciences was commissioned to create new characters, new letters, as a beautiful image of Louis XIV. And they created Le Romain du Roi, which is a font which is not so well known, but during 100 years, this was the only possible font you had to use for any official document. And that was the creation of three academicians, which I like them very much because they, in particular, they invented the concept of pixel. Before that, you would never see an image made out of points. These academicians created these beautiful letters made out of pixels, and they made a theory of how you can represent a letter by pixels. Another example, it has been mentioned already here, the Académie des Sciences sent several of them, of the academicians who, on the North Pole or the Arctic Circle, and some others close to the equator to measuring the Earth. That was a very important moment in the history of science. That was the job of the Académie des Sciences. That's one opportunity for me to tell you that at the time, the Académie des Sciences was some kind of a research institute, producing research. This is not the case anymore. We do not have the duty of producing any new science. And of course, most of you know that the metric system has been invented by the Académie des Sciences, and that's a major moment in the history of the world. Unifying all these units was something very important. Okay. In 1835, one of my heroes, astronomer, mathematician, physicist, Arago, politician, Arago was upset because the Académie des Sciences was not open to the external world. So he decided that science should be shared with the external world, in particular with journalists. So he created a journal, a scientific journal, whose duty was to inform the public, the general public, of the news, the new discoveries. And he created the Compte Rendu de l'Académie des Sciences, which was, during many years, was maybe one of the most important scientific journals in the world. I have to say that the prestige of this journal has been going down, 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 down. And let's say, during the first half of the 20th century, I would say this journal was kind of sleeping. One of the reasons is that it was going against the original idea of Arago. Papers became more complicated, more difficult to read, and kind of not open to the public because of the lack of open science. So recently we have changed completely the system. It's still a scientific journal called the Compte Rendu, but we have decided to make it freely accessible to the world. So everybody can go there, read it for free, and that's a commitment for us because it costs money. There's no free lunch. It costs money to us. So we have to find money from the Académie des Sciences to pay for this scientific journal. It contains a lot of series. One of them you can see on the right is called Vie des Sciences. is supposed to be papers or explanations accessible to everybody. It's open access. I think this is a fundamental fact. I mean, science should be open access. And of course, there are several possibilities of understanding what open access means, but I believe that open access should be free. That's something very important to me. Oh, I wanted to say that how is the election procedure? Many people claim that the only mission of academicians is to elect academicians. It's not completely wrong. So the question is, how can you do better than that? So first of all, I will show you a picture which has been produced by Arthur Kessler a long time ago, in 1980. You can see the average age of election of academicians since 1663, and you see that close to the end of the 20th century, it was around 65 years old. So this was strange. And then Kessler added this. This is the average age of death. And then he extrapolated the curves, and you have this. So he understood that around 2100, we were able to elect dead people. So he said, we cannot continue this way. We have to change the system. We have to be more careful to elect younger people and to be more careful on the number of academicians. And there was a long and difficult discussion. And among the modifications, there were some rules to elect more young people. Look at that. This is the statistics of the age at election of new members. You can see from this picture that there are two kinds of new members, those who are less than 55 and those who are more than 65. And the explanation is easy. We have decided 20 years ago, we have decided that 1/2 of our new members should be less than 65, at least less than 55. And this explains this strange statistics. And if you look globally at the age of our members, is it good? No. It should be much better. One of the problems is that when you are elected for your life. So it's very difficult to change these statistics. And the other problem, as we mentioned earlier, that it could be a good idea to create a young academy where young academicians elected much earlier for a definite amount of time. I think this is a project that maybe my successor will do. You have here the proof that we are doing better. This is the average age at election, and you see that it's going down, and today we have indeed the average age at election is about 55. Okay, the process of election. And this is one of the main difficulties of our academy, that some members consider that this is only a prestige. It's like one line in your vita, and they don't participate to the scientific life of the academy, and it's like an honor. So I show you some of the caricatures showing how to prepare you to be academician. Here's the one, another one, and the third one. You see that academicians are kind of ridiculous. And sometimes this is true. Here's the recent election that we had, in order to show you that we have this beautiful beautiful, I don't know, this beautiful dress, green dress. I hope you can see Napoleon in the back. And I hope you can see that there is a large proportion of women. We have decided, and it turns out that in the recent elections, basically we had half of the new members are women. In total, we have 18% women in the academy, which is not good. But since you're elected for your life, we have a stock of old men. We cannot get rid of them. So we are doing better. It will take some time, probably 20 years, to get something reasonable. But 18% is not good, is not a good image of the scientific community, and we have to improve that. You have here the female new members. You see, not only they are female, but they are kind of young. Now, one of the important facts about the academy is we give prizes. It's a lot of work. We give about 80 prizes every year. This implies 80 committees selecting the winners, the awardees. This is a lot of work. And we finally give their prizes, like on this picture. Françoise, who is he? You remember? Who? You don't remember. So, Françoise for? No. Anyway, this is, I think, this is one of the main activities of the academy to celebrate talented scientists. We have 80 awards. The selection procedure is, I think, optimal. We have, and we are, as you see on the previous pictures, they are presented in formal ceremonies under the dome of the Institute. This is very prestigious, etc., etc. Now we also have, and this is another main point, which I think did not exist in the earlier versions of the Academy. We have a lot of committees meeting very frequently, discussing, debating, and producing reports. You have here a list of some of them. I will not describe all of them. I will choose some of them. Two of them. One is called CODOS, Committee for the Defense of Scientists. This is a committee trying to help scientists in countries who are in prison, for example. So this is a kind of a discrete activity. They have connection with the corresponding consulates or embassies to try to help people having difficult problems with their country, political problems. Another committee is the committee of Marc Foncave. It's called Committee on Energy. This is a very important committee which has, since 2018, producing many very interesting reports which are rather well received by the government. I told you that the historical mission of the Academy was to advise the government. And on this example, Emmanuel Macron asked Marc to think about the use of hydrogen in the energy. And Marc and collaborators produced a report on that. This is probably one of the most efficient committees that we have. But we have many committees. For example, we have international committee trying to connect with several countries. In particular, we are a member of the ISC, International Science Council. This is also a lot of work, and very soon there will be the S7. You know what S7 is? You don't know? You should. You know what G7 is? So G7 is a meeting of 7 more powerful countries discussing important problems in the world, and this G7 is surrounded by a satellite called S7. It's G7 is government 7, I think. S7 is for science. So 7 countries meet, discuss, and write report, and send the report to the G7. And this will be in Paris next May. This is a lot of work, and all these 7 committees, several countries will come to Paris, and we'll try to write something on the important questions. And here's an example of a report that we had on scientific evaluation. We were discussing the other day of the use of H factor. We have strong opinions on that. We have a report. We have decided to sign the DORA declaration. So we try to convince the scientific community that bibliometry is not the best way to evaluate people. If you want to evaluate a scientist, only one way. You should read what he writes. You should not believe the numbers. So this is only one example. And finally, another committee which is close to my heart, because I like teaching, I like education problems. I can tell you that the education in France, the educational system in France, is in a terrible situation. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. Nothing is okay. And this is not new, and this is not new in particular in science. 30 years ago, 2 Nobel Prizes, one, forgot, reacted against the bad quality of science teaching in France, and they created a foundation called Hands-On, la main à la pâte. So the idea is how to help teachers to teach science. And this is something that has been progressing a lot. They are doing very well. I take part to this. And this is, I think, one of the best, I believe, this is one of the best productions of the Académie des Sciences in the last 30 years. We are doing well in this direction. Not enough, but we are meeting teachers, explaining to them how to teach better, and writing report on that. I mentioned at the beginning that sometimes we have problems with the government. This is a good example. For example, we wrote a report on science education in primary school. And this report was exactly against the opinion of the Minister of Education. Well, we are proud of that. I mean, when we disagree, we express that we disagree, we make it clear. The minister was not happy, but we published this report. I don't know if it was efficient or not, but we did it. So this question of education is central in science in France and in many countries. And of course, we have many international networks. For example, I mentioned the International Science Council, etc. And we have many agreements with many countries, like, for example, the one that we signed today with CTU. Okay, I hope I gave you a rough idea of what we do. I would say that we do our best. Could be improved in many aspects, but we do our best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ghys. Now I'd like to open the floor for questions from the audience. Maybe I'll start with the first one, if you don't mind. I think a lot of what you shared are very relevant to me. because I also am serving as the president of the
I
Hong Kong
know.
Young Academy of Sciences. And a lot of these things that you talk about, for example, whether you want to elect someone just based on prestige and how do you take into account their service to the society, community is always a question that we think a lot about. And also some of these, what you talked about, having a foundation of how to teach teachers, how to teach science and things like that, is also a lot of what we think about as well. And I think one of the rationale for us setting up the Young Academy, which you also shared about, was we thought that, or our senior academy members thought that maybe young academics are closer to the students and more in a position to share with them. So I think a lot of these ring a lot of resonance between your sharing and mine. So hopefully I can exchange more thoughts with you later on. One question that I like to ask
Before you go on,
Sure.
let me mention something. In the 18th century,
Yes.
there were several categories of academicians. You had the full member,
Yep.
and when a full member got old, he was declared a veteran. He was still a member, but not taking part of decisions. But before you got the degree of full members,
Yes.
you were pupil. So academicians, élève, pupil. And finally, there were a final category called honoraire. That means people who are not good scientists, but noble, close to the king. So able to communicate with the king. So the standard member, I don't know, the Laplace or Lagrange, all these people, they were not really directly connected with the power because they're writing books. But they had people offering a link with the power. And today we do not have that. We have only member.
I see. Our Young Academy currently has two kinds, members and alumni members. We are thinking about setting up the associate members, but that's under discussion. So, but one thing that I think Hong Kong academies in general that do not have, that you have in the French Academy is the permanent secretary. So could you share a little bit about the difference in the role of the permanent secretary and the president of the academy?
That's a good question, not so easy. Let me tell you. First, the word in French is perpetual. Perpetual. Yep. So originally, when the academy was founded, the perpetual secretary was elected for life.
Okay.
But I think it's not a good idea to have old people on top of an academy, too old. So we have decided, I think, maybe 30 years ago, that perpetuity would be at most 8 years. Okay, so my perpetuity is almost finished. I've been 7 years. So the word perpetual, forget it. It's old-fashioned. Again, I would be in favor of forgetting about this word. But the problem is, did we belong to the Institut de France? And the Institut has 5 academies, and each academy has a secrétaire perpétuel. So if we decide to forget about the terminology, that would be weakening our situation. So I think I would be in favor, but the other 4 are not in favor. That's a good example. Okay, so that's explanation of the word. Now, in our academy, we have 2 secrétaires perpétuels, and we have 1 president and 1 vice president. In a nutshell, I would say, I don't know if François has a degree, the secrétaire perpétuel have in charge the everyday life of the academy, and Françoise, on top of that, has a perception of outside life of academy. Is that a good summary? Okay. International, like for example, yeah.
I see. Thank you.
But we have the structure. We have what we call the bureau. It's a president, a vice president, 2 perpetual, and we have a representative for education, representative for international, and 1 for communication. And these 7 people meet on a very regular basis next Monday morning. And we work, I think, in a kind of a collective way.
I see. Thank you. Yes, please.
I think you gave a very good view of the French Academy of Science. But if you talk to a French person in the street and you talk about the Academy, for him or for her, it's the Académie Française, which is the literary academy, which takes place under the same dome in the Institute of France. And in this case, the Secrétaire perpetuel is really perpetual. The last, for example, Hélène Carrère-Dalcos died almost 100 years old, still Secrétaire of the Academy.
But still very active.
Excuse me?
Still active.
Yes, no, she was active, but okay. And also in the French Academy, the number of seats is limited to 40. And when you are elected, you know what were the people who were before you, going back to the 17th century, which is no longer the case. I don't know if that ever been the case in our academy.
Yeah, it was the case until 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's another example of the problem with the Institute. The Institute contains 5 academies. One of them is very famous in France. Everybody knows the Académie Française in literature. And we are the poor member of the family. And we are as good as them, but we are not known. And so if you go to the river Seine on these boats, the guide will say to the tourist, on your left, you have the Académie Française, forgetting us. So this is one of the difficulties for us. If we have discussions, maybe we should simply leave this beautiful building to go somewhere else and be our own perception of what is science. But if we do that, we will lose, first of all, a beautiful building, and second of all, some kind of protection from the other academies.
You're more well known in Kowloon Tong than the other academies.
Thank you very much indeed. That was, as a historian, I really enjoyed that lecture, and there are many parallels with the Royal Society in the UK. I guess I've got...
You are older than us, 4 years.
Oh, yes. 2 things, really. The motto of our Royal Society is in Latin, but roughly translated, it means take no one's word for it. Yep. In other words, a focus on experimental validation of theories and so on. And I wondered whether you had under either the Institute or actually under your Academy of Sciences a similar commitment to that kind of intellectual independence, never mind the political independence, which may cost you your head, but the intellectual independence. That was kind of question 1. And if I'm allowed a second, it would be this. Given you've got 5 institutes inside, 5 academies inside your institute, how do you cope with the arrival of an interdisciplinary or a completely new field which doesn't respect the boundaries, particularly, of those 5? I mean, obviously, I could say, AI or something. That must have happened in the past as well.
Inside science?
Yeah.
So inside science, this is a very fundamental question. You are dealing with it now. So we are proposing the creation of new sections inside the Académie des Sciences. Until now, we have 8 sections, mathematics, physics, etc. And we have understood rather recently that it makes no sense not to have a good place for computer science. And this is decided, and I hope before 1 year, there will be a new section, and that computer scientists will leave the section of Philippe. Philippe belongs to a section called mechanics, and that's a good question, but we are dealing with that. And for your first, this is our job. And for your first question, we have also a beautiful Latin sentence. invenit et perficit. So we invite and we improve.
So quite different.
Very different.
Royal Society.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so an obvious mission that you mentioned is, of course, promoting science, scientific research, and education. I was interested that you mentioned that Louis XIV had, in addition to these missions, the fact that he wanted to be advised by the Academy.
I see what you mean.
So what is your opinion about this mission today? I mean, the interaction between the Academy of Science and the government in general. For example, we have had the president for now 8 years. How many times did
Seven.
22?
No, 8 years.
8 years. Yeah, we forget because it's... so how many times did it come to the Institute for discussing with the academicians?
Okay, I can try to answer, but I know that you know the answer. So
I don't know. I don't know the answer to the last question.
First of all, I mentioned to you that Louis XIV wanted a font in honor of his reign, le Romain du Roi. But our President Macron also wanted a font in his honor. Do you use it? Every official text produced by the French government, including consulate, has to be printed in a specific font, which has been created in 2020 and ordered by l'Élysée. This, I'm sure you don't know that. And this font is called Mariana. And this is a font that I cannot use, but you can only use it in official documents. That's answer one. Answer two, you know very well that President Macron interferes with us from time to time, not very frequently. I think in the last 7 years, I think I met him 9 or 10 times, not more. Each time he takes his time, we have the time to discuss. He's a clever man, he understands a lot. I'm not sure he listens to us, but it is a fact that he is interested by science. I think it's not clear that he does that in practice in his way of governing, but it's a fact. He's interested by science. Now, you know very well that at some moment, 1 year and a half ago, he created something called Presidential Council, containing maybe 10 scientists, 8 of them being members of our academy, and they meet from time to time to discuss a specific point in science. Can I say more? I don't think so. I mean, the final outcome is not convincing to me. Not convincing to me. How many times he came to the Institute? To the Académie des Sciences, never. To the Académie des Sciences. To the Institute, he came 3 or 4 times, which is much better than Mitterrand, who never came. But he came to the Institute several times to give speeches. For example, I remember very well, for the anniversary of Napoleon, he gave a wonderful speech in the Coupole. But, well, okay. I think what I can say is that it's very sad that in the time of Napoleon, many ministers, many people in charge of the country were scientists. We know most of them, many of them were scientists. This, during all 19th century, this was true. Today, this is not the case anymore. In the government today, we have only one scientist, depending on the definition of scientist. You would say zero? Zero, but that depends what you call scientist. This is a serious problem. Our government did not understand that science is important for the government, for the country. We need a Colbert.
Napoleon was the first president of the Academy.
Yeah. So Napoleon, a few words. Napoleon was elected a member of the Académie des Sciences when he was very, very young. He was 25 or 26. He had no scientific results. It is clear that he was elected because Laplace, Lagrange, all these great guys understood that he would be soon powerful. Yes, yeah. Okay. Anyway, so he was elected, and he participated to the life of the Academy during 1 year. He was president during 6 months, and then he never came back to the Academy, but he was busy, of course. And when he came back from his first rejection, he said, "Now I am not a member anymore of your academy, I am your protector."
So in the interest of time, maybe we take one more question and then we can have more interactions after conclusions.
Yeah.
I think lots of very interesting discussions.
I have one question. I understand that in century past, people from outside the academy, scientists or mathematicians, were sending their research paper to the academy to be reviewed or to be commented upon.
Yep.
Is it still the case now? And if it is the case, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, it is less than before, but it's still the case. The compte rendu de l'Académie had a good tradition that it was published quickly. You would send a paper to the Academy, it would be published the next week, which is something you cannot even dream of today. Huh? And so this question of velocity was one of the good points of the Académie des Sciences. Today, I think one of the major good points is open science, free journal. Many scientists like this aspect and submit papers because of this open science condition. Actually, we are publishing this journal with the help of a structure of CNRS. This structure is called Mersenne, coming back to the origin.
Thank you. So with that, may I once again express our sincere gratitude to Professor Ghys for very inspiring talk and lots of insights about Science Academy. I hope that we can continue to support the cause of academies everywhere for the perpetuation of science and knowledge. So, and also thank you all for attending today's lecture. If you have more questions, you can interact with lots of both the speakers and also lots of distinguished members among the audience. So thank you once again for your attendance. Thank you.